Greetings and welcome to the Stoic Gamer podcast. My name's Michael Bolton. In this podcast, I talk to players at all different levels of the hobby about their experience going to competitive events, whether it's their first time or whether they're a seasoned old timer like myself. I discuss the events we're going to, I discuss the events we've been to, and I talk about everything from army building, rules queries, happenings on the table to hotel disasters and culinary and gastronomic accidents, all part of the hobby and all part of visiting different parts of the country and the world as part of our fantastic 40k hobby. If you like this kind of content and you want to hear more, please let me know. If it's on YouTube, please just leave something in the comments. I'll always get back to you if I can. And if you're listening on any other kind of platform such as Spotify, do leave me a message.
So, friend of the channel and expert Necron player, Mark Crumbleholme, who in 2023 was the global highest ranking Necron player and the UKTC highest ranking Necron player, got in touch with me and said, I'm going to the Manchester GT. I want to talk through my list on your podcast. I said, fine. I'm going to the Battlefield Birmingham. I wonder if my list looks anything like yours. We have a chat about it. So for the next 40 minutes or so, we have a ramble. Now, this covers a lot of ground. We talk about what's in our lists. We talk about the meta. We talk about the key players that Mark is definitely going to meet at the Manchester Super Major. And one or two of the players like Manny Chima, possibly the best player in the country, who has squeaked into Battlefield Birmingham this weekend with a ridiculous list, which you will hear about on the podcast. If you want to go that far, if you fancy sleeping at nights, I suggest you turn off now because his list is horrible, and yet silly. Anyway, listener, have a go. Listen to what we're talking about. So it's two entirely different Necron lists where we disagree in many ways. Hello, Mark, and thank you for joining the Stoic Gamers podcast.
No worries, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's been a long. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Now, for the listener, Mark is probably one of the best Necron players in the country. He was the highest ranked ITC Necron player globally in the season that's just ended. And I think he did the same thing with the UKTC as well. So no slouch. And the reason he's here is because he is going to the Manchester Super Major in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to the Battlefield Birmingham, a bit smaller, but there's still 88 players, so it's not tiny. And I think what we thought we'd do is have a chat about preparing our lists, any issues that we had, simple things around tournaments and what we need to do before we go, just so everybody has an idea. Does that kind of make sense with you, Mark? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Super. So tell us about why you're going to the Manchester GT, and where you're staying, what you're doing, and then let's start talking about your list.
Sure. So I'm going to the Manchester GT because I like the UKTC events. I tend to focus my time around them with a few select other events throughout the year. I do like to support, local events and other people trying to set stuff up, but I have limited time, so I like the idea that I know what I'm getting, and I think you get that with the UKTC events. Where am I staying? In my house that's about 25 minutes away from Manchester.
Do you know what? That's exactly why I'm going to Battlefield Birmingham, because it's 25 minutes away from my house as well.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite events of the year because it's just nearby and I don't have to mess about with hotels. And I think, unfortunately, Zach's been really messed about by the venue he had booked. So they just sent a mail out today. The venue's changed. So
no, where is it now?
So it was in the city centre.
Yeah.
And now it's not in the city centre. It's in Urmston, which is sort of the top left or northwest. side of Manchester, pretty much opposite the Trafford Centre.
Okay. Oh, so it's
Um,
not too far then.
it's not if you've got a car. If you're walking and you've booked a hotel in the city centre, you're probably going to want to get an Uber.
Are we going to expect some groaning and moaning about it, do you think?
I hope not, because it really doesn't sound like it's Zach's fault. The
Yeah.
venue's cancelled with a week and a half's notice, and it's Manchester. So getting a venue seems like they've pulled a miracle off, to be
You're
honest.
telling
So
me. You're telling me.
yeah, fingers crossed. Any moaning is, limited, and they understand that it was this or cancel.
Yeah. And it's only 2 weeks away, isn't it?
Yeah, less than.
God. All right. Tell me, Necrons. You're sticking with Necrons because I know you've played other things, but for the last 12, 18 months, you've been a Necron fan.
Yeah.
What are you doing with your list this time? Why have you taken what you've taken? What armies do you think you're going to be facing? And what do you think the meta is doing now that there's been a few changes over the last few weeks?
All right. I'll start with the meta. Okay, because it's going to help answer the other question. So, recent meta has been a shift. I think it's been a shift towards vehicle heavy armies. You've seen monoliths, you've seen Space Marine lists with multiple tanks, Black Templars, with an awful lot of suspicious Reapers
Yeah.
knocking about. Just before that, there was Dreadnoughts knocking about, and I think the only list that's bucking that trend is the equally terrifying Custodes, which just seemed to be a lot better since the last data slate. Um,
Yeah.
and as Manny very kindly highlighted that they were awesome by going and winning an event, they'll be popular, I think, in the meta. So I'm expecting high numbers of vehicles and high numbers of custodes, and
Can
then
I,
I think Necrons.
can I just interrupt you with a little snippet of interesting information? Manny is coming to Battlefield Birmingham this weekend. He's not taking Custodes, he's taking Grey Knights. And his
Yeah,
list, his list is, I think it's 3 Redeemer Land Raiders, 5 grade Nemesis war suits or whatever they're called, and a couple of infantry guys just for doing bits and bobs with. That's it.
well, you say that's it, but that sounds awful and terrifying.
It
It does,
does.
however, lean into me saying there's going to be a lot of vehicles knocking about.
That's why I mentioned it, because I just wanted to verify what you were saying. That seems to be the way things are going.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where it's going to go. Um, and yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's a pretty balanced meta. I think Necron's Canoptic Court, which Josh Roberts is slowly massacring his way through the country with,
I know.
that's going to be a popular choice because there is a reasonable amount of if you can't beat them, join them people in this country.
Yeah.
And there's just nothing wrong with that. So you're going to face a lot of wraiths, and I don't think many people would pilot it as well as Josh. Like I do think that list has weaknesses.
Yeah.
Not many, but I do think it has weaknesses. And Josh is an exceptional player, but I still think that list will be very, very popular.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's roughly what I'm mostly expecting. A general decline in Eldar.
So, am I imagining that your list, therefore, is geared up a little bit more, or perhaps emphasizes more the ability to kill vehicles with high strength, high AP, multiple damage weapons?
A little bit. So I'm chances are I'm going to bring an adjusted version of the list I brought to the ITT, and which was itself an adjusted version of the list that I brought to Nottingham.
Right.
So I sort of stumbled or fell into a list that worked with my playstyle pretty early on, and I've fell into the trap of trying to constantly tweak it, and it just might not be that bad. So I'm sticking with it, but I have, and this is just for you, Mike, and I guess everyone else that listens. I
The
have
other listener, don't
really,
worry. There's only 2 of us. You'll be all
yeah,
right.
yeah. I have really toyed with the idea of bringing Annihilation Legion, but I'm not doing it. So
Oh, you really got to share why? Because it's complete. I can't make it work.
because of Custodes, basically, Annihilation Legion forces you to do an awful lot of combat
Yeah,
to get the most out of it, and I can't charge all that fights first, and I will lose the units. So it's not the right time. I need Custodes to float away a little bit, and then I'll be a lot happier. But if Custodes weren't so popular, I think I'd have taken Annihilation Legion. I like the fluff
yeah,
behind it all. You
yeah,
know, I want to just run a load of mad psychopaths
yeah,
running across the board with knives.
yeah. I like.
It plays into my old Drakari days, you know.
Why
Um,
not? So what's in this one? What's in the list that you're going to be taking?
it's Hypercrypt Legion,
Yep,
and because there are obviously four really good stratagems that really work very, very well with monoliths, and obviously Matt Laura won the LVO with monoliths, and multiple monolith lists are doing very good, especially in a team's environment. I'm bringing no monolith. I'm bringing essentially MSU Hypercrypt.
yep.
So let's start with characters, I guess. I'm bringing a Technomancer, and I'll give you one guess what unit he's going to live in.
Is it? Can I guess? Is it wraiths?
It is. It's a unit of 6 wraiths, Mike. Yeah. Um, now this list is generally built around the idea that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But if they do fix it, I'm not going to cry about having to change one or two units.
Yep.
Right. So it's a brick of wraiths with a Technomancer, full
Yep.
6-man brick.
Yep.
And obviously, they've got the stuff that I would expect to see, which is the claws that are only dangerous if they hit, and the pistols.
Of course. And I'm assuming that the Technomancer has got the. Oh no, you've got Hypercrit. You're not going to be infiltrating with them. No. Okay.
Absolutely not. No, but I'm happy enough legging it 10 inches through a
Yep.
wall, and
Yep.
it gets me into the middle. They tend not to go past that point. Technomancer is carrying an enhancement, but he doesn't need it for anything. It's just so it's in my list. It's a Dimensional Overseer, which lets me get an additional Hyperface unit.
Yep. Yep.
So he's messing about, and then I've got the Nightbringer. Same theme. It will probably get a little tweak in the data slate, so I'm enjoying him while he can. Although by enjoying him while I can, I mean he keeps missing, and it's doing my head in. But on paper, he's good, and sooner or later, paper and reality should line up for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then I'm running a Chronomancer, and he's just going to hang around with 5 Immortals for mission play shenanigans.
Yep.
And then I've got 2 Locust Lords.
Yep.
So they both got Lord's Blade and a Resurrection Orb. Now, there's a big argument for taking the Staff of Light, because you just get those extra shots, and you can just finish units off or chip the odd wound away. But the amount of times I've found my unit dead and my Lord alive, and I really enjoy him just floating around, being a murderous 6-wound psychopath that does devastating wounds.
Yep.
So they're staying with the Lord's Blade and the Res Orb.
Yep. I'd do that.
2 relics, 1 on each. One of them gives the unit he's with Deep Strike. That's the Osteoclave Fulcrum.
Yep.
And the other one is a Risen Tyrant, which is a piece of tech that I thoroughly stole from Chris Kinnair at Nottingham. I don't know if Chris stole it off someone else or not. Possibly conversations with Josie Cartwright, because those are just two of the long time sort of Necron mains within the country that both hanging around the Team England setup at the minute.
Yeah.
So
I think, aren't they both in the last 16 from which they're going to have a pick?
Well, I think Chris is vice captain, so he's
He's
in. Josie's in the last 16.
Yeah.
And I didn't apply this year, but I hang around because I like to feel popular. But yeah, they're really good. They're good people to talk to about Necrons. So I stole that off Chris because the Arisen Tyrant relic, where you can full rerolls to hit on a turn where you're set up, is really nice. So that's my 5 characters. Does give away Assassinate, but one of them hides around in a really tough brick of models, and one of them is a Star God so I don't mind it too much. If you want to take Assassinate, go ahead.
Yeah.
So 5 Immortals, as I said, just Tesla, just for mission play.
Yep.
Assault, advance, shoot, move after shooting, lots of stuff they can do. And this is controversial now. This used to be 2 5-mans, Michael, but it's now 10.
I bet it's Death
Assassins.
Marks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 death marks. I didn't need as much mission play as I had, but I decided the 10-man brick was better. One, because it'll survive a bit more if I get shot by things like artillery.
Yep.
It's a 10-man will survive more than one gun, so he's really going to have to commit if he wants the unit dead. And when I do teleport the 10-man unit, it's very likely that the character they try and snipe dies.
Yep.
As opposed to 5-man, which is not very likely. The most
I
of them
agree.
die.
Yep. I like it.
10 flayed ones. Lots of mission play. Very handy to prevent infiltrating scout. But I just think they're great, and I like the combat ability of them.
I'll tell you what, I love them. I've dropped them from my list, and the reason is I fought Grey Knights a couple of weeks ago, and a librarian popped out with his Vortex of Doom and killed all of them by rolling a 6. And I was very, very depressed.
I understand that, but that could have happened to any 10 model single wound unit, right? It could have happened to your death marks.
It could. It absolutely could. I was very impressed by the Grey Knights, and if you'd listened to my previous podcast when I had a chat with Kyle Grundy, we both thought, hang on a minute, these guys are on the rise. Grey Knights are coming, and I think they're going to be getting better and better over the next couple of months.
Yeah, they are. They changed the Dread Knight data sheet, and that's probably enough. Because now you're going to face 5 or 6 of them in most of the top tier lists, I think, and they're very, very annoying and upsetting to my people. So,
so you've got a 10-man brick of death marks. What else you got?
10 flayed ones as well.
And I'll bet you've got some individual destroyers.
I absolutely do not, Mike.
Oh, go on.
No. I got 6 of them, and I stuck them all in one big unit.
Oh, this list sounds so much like the one I took a couple of weeks ago to the one day. But go on. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 of them, they're going to hang around. Normally, they'll hang around with the Deep Strike Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then I've got 2 units of 3 heavy destroyers with the anti-tank guns.
Yes.
Yeah, Gauss Destructors, or Gauss Destructors. I don't know how you say that word. They're good. That all 3 of those units are sort of anti-vehicle. I wouldn't call it tech because I'm over the age of 40 and I don't like the term. It feels weird.
It does.
But I don't know what else to call it. So it's there to kill vehicles. And then I've got a 3rd unit of heavy destroyers with the Antimic Exterminators. They hang around with the Risen Tyrant Lord.
Yeah, and they do a lot of damage when you get to re-roll everything. That's really good.
It's the exploding, lethal, not lethal, sustained hits on 5s with 4 re-rolls is really tasty. Yeah. And, if people
36.
well, I think it averages 42 hits.
Yeah, it's hideous.
At
36-inch range, which is nice and safe most of the time.
Yeah, 18 if you want the 36 shots, but yeah. It's rapid fire, so you only get the 18 shots. If you're far away, and after that, it's 3 units of 3 Tomb Blades, mate. 4 mission play.
Yep, nice. I like that. Does that come to 2,000 points?
That is, I think it's 1995.
Close enough. I like that. I like it a lot. It's very similar to what I used a couple of weeks ago, but I don't have all of the models you had. I used the Lord with 6 Locust Destroyers, and they were awesome in 2 of the 3 games, where I was able to deep strike, shoot, sustained hits, lethal hits, on 5s. Great. But they're 2 damage at -2. So as soon as you're fighting something that is Armour of Contempt and in cover, they get their normal save. And if they happen to be, I don't know, let's say Hearthguard from Votan or Terminators, they're saving on 2s, and all of a sudden that brick that you were hoping was going to blow things away doesn't do a great deal. So I think that was a disappointment for me when I tried to use them.
I think it would be disappointing, but I also think that when you're teleporting around, including the option of a
Yeah,
3-inch teleport, whether something's in cover or not is kind of in your wheelhouse a lot more than if you're walking the unit.
yeah, it
Um,
is.
and I've killed Bellacore on Overwatch with the unit. It's it is a tasty unit. Full rerolls when you're shooting something that's on an objective is just it's my favorite unit. The only thing, if I could change anything about it, well, two things. I'd give them new models because they're about 1,000 years old.
They are.
But I'd take them off the silly flying bases they're on. But they're too big. It's a really big footprint.
It's massive. Yeah, it is.
But
And they're mounted, aren't they? So moving through
yeah,
you, well, if you had to move them, it would be an issue. But because you're going to be hyperphasing them every turn, it really doesn't matter that they can't move through buildings.
yeah, and because I most commonly don't want that unit restricted to strategic reserve
Yeah,
arrival locations.
yeah,
That's why I have the Osteoclave Fulcrum on the Lord that joins them, so they get deep strike, so they can go anywhere.
yeah,
Um, and I find them useful. Now, in some games, they only go down for one turn and then they die, and it's 280 points, but it takes quite a lot from most armies to wipe the unit.
it does. And you know what people are like? They know that if they don't kill all of them, they're going to start getting up again. So you often find that people overcommit to killing them, which means something else in your army is getting away lightly.
Yeah, and I agree. And that unit will kill, generally speaking, the target I choose for it, right? So I'm probably not going to choose to shoot Votan Terminators in cover, but I might choose to shoot um, the Hecaton Land Fortress without cover. As,
Yeah,
as an example, that I might do that. I might split fire between two Sagittars, and I might do it to bait out Armor of Contempt. But I don't know what I'm going to do. But I like them. I've not had a bad enough experience where they're going in the bin.
no, I
You know,
haven't. I like them. And in the list I took a couple of weeks ago, I had those. I had a unit of 3 heavy destroyers. It was quite similar. 2 units of death marks, 10 flayed ones. It was very similar to the kind of thing you're talking about. But how do you think you're going to get on with it? Don't say you're going to win all 6 games and be crowned king of the Necrons. Just give us a clue. What do you think? And be modest.
so in the games I've played at tournament level with them,
Yeah,
which is Nottingham and ITT. So it's a teams event, so it's
yeah,
slightly different.
yeah.
I've won 9. I lost 1 by 1 point to Meta Chaos Space Marines before they got data slated.
Mm,
So I think the list is strong. It is really good into power armor.
yeah.
I enjoyed it into Custodes a lot because you can focus a couple of units a turn down.
Do you think you've got the shooting there to actually, there's a 5-man bunch of custodes sitting on an objective with armor of contempt, 2 up save, 4 up invulnerable. Have you got enough, and can you get angles enough to get rid of one of those in a single turn, do you think?
I definitely got enough to kill through it. Angles is dependent on my opponent more than me. I've got the range. I've got the shooting. It will do it. It has done it
Right,
before,
right.
So I don't mind. Even if someone ends up on a 2-up save, it is they're gonna roll ones every now and again.
Yep.
Um, six, um, the 6 heavy Gauss destructors. That's my main anti-vehicle. Um, so that's going to be like obviously trying to protect those a little bit. So they'll be kind of restricting themselves with what they're shooting at, being at range, just trying to sort of get that minimal angle right down the board and kill
Yeah.
a vehicle. And then later in the game, they really will push forwards. And
Yep.
once I'm confident my opponent can't kill all my units, then I will probably push a bit more, start trying to restrict their primary and secondary scoring slightly later in the game because I tend to be more mobile. Grey Knights is one of those matchups I don't really want because they can do the same things as me,
Mm.
but comes down to their abilities to roll 4-ups on the Dread Knights
It
or
does.
3-ups, whatever it is.
It does. Well, just as an example of that, at the event I went to a couple of weeks ago, my 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers targeted Shalaxi across the table. Greater Demon, 4-up invulnerable, 20 odd wounds. Hit her, hit her 3 times, wounded her 3 times. She failed all of her saves, and I did 18 damage. And then
Yeah.
the normal destroyers finished her off. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. It was all over before you could blink.
Yeah. See, I like that kind of world. I like a world where my Death Marks shoot Trajan and just kill him. And then my Nightbringer runs around with relative impunity and just chops a custode squad a turn up. He
How are
lets
you?
them fight first. It's
How
like
are
his
you going to
bloat.
deal? How are you going to deal with a mirror match where you're fighting 4 or 5 Catans?
Um, well, score where I can by just walking onto the objectives. The 4 or 5 Catans, there's very little else in that list.
Yeah,
So he'll have 4 OC4 on most objectives. I'll walk onto it and with like 3 bikes, just stop him
yep,
from scoring,
easy.
throw it away, shoot them from range, hope you get stuff through, kill the Nightbringer, kill the Void Dragon, Transcendent Catan. Not that scary generally.
No,
That's why I stopped using them. It's
yeah, they're great for mission play, but they're 200 odd points, 60 odd points or whatever it is for something you can use 5 death marks for.
yeah, exactly. I don't. The idea of just chucking like Transcendent Catan behind my enemy's deployment zone just to get behind enemy lines and then let his whole army open up into them. That's not something that's ever realistically going to happen. But I think I'm practiced enough with this list that I can do something with it. Whereas if I brought, like the Annihilation Legion list that we talked about, I'm
Yeah,
going to sooner or later I will run into a solid bad matchup, and it's just going to go, oh well, that's you know
yep,
that's over.
yeah.
So I want to go 4-1. Um,
I think you'll
five
do that.
5-0 would be nice. It's a one event I don't mind staying for, but
Yeah,
the amount of people that go and the quality of the people that go in, it's going to be just an absolutely sort of
it'll be a shark.
destructive day two.
It'll
So
be a Shark Tank. When I spoke to Kyle a couple of days ago, he's going, so that'll be fun. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my list, shall I? Just in
yeah,
case the listener is interested. I had a list that was similar to yours, and I did a comparison with Vic VJ, and Vic pulled together a Necron list. And I pulled mine together, and I like mine. I took it to an event, and I lost 2 and won 1. It's a 1-day event, but all the games were within about 11 points, one way or the other.
yeah,
So I think the my conclusion of that event was all I've got to do is get better. I because if I lost by 11 points, I can find 11 points in a game. It's just about being better at what I'm doing.
yeah,
So I thought, well, I'll stick to the same list. And then I thought, no, I won't. I'm going to change my list entirely, and I'm going to do something along the lines of what Vic VJ came up with. So it's not exactly like the list he gave me because I don't have all the models, but I'll tell you what's in it. It's a Hypocrite Legion, and I'd like your comments on this as well. Hypocrite Legion, it's got 2 Chronomancers, one with Arisen Tyrant and one with Osteoclave Fulcrum, which you know what they do. One's Deep Strike, the other one is reroll all your hits when you arrive from reserve.
yeah,
They're going to go with 2 tens of Immortals. One's got carbines and one's got blasters, but that's only because that's the models I have.
yeah,
Then I wanted another unit of infantry because if I'm going to take a monolith, I want to be able to use the monolith ability to move infantry around. And I didn't want another single model 3-up save. So I put in 10 Lich Guard with Imitek the Stormlord because he gives you the extra command points. And if he's with the Lich Guard, if anybody attacks you with a higher strength than your toughness, they're at -1 strength. So, that's makes them a little bit more resilient. So they got the 4-up save. Then I've got the Silent King, because I love the Silent King. And he's staying, I don't care what, he's just going to stay there. Then I've got 2 single Locust Destroyers, just for basically doing mission work. 2 Monoliths. How about that? And then something that I'd never thought I'd take, but something that actually I think might be quite useful in a Hypercrit Legion, is a Triarch Stalker. Because I can drop him in and shoot at something and take away their cover. So that all of the stuff that's shooting either at -1, like the Gauss blasters, or -4, which would negate anybody's save, but if they're in cover, they get a 6-up save. And the amount of times people have rolled a 6 to save a vehicle from dying has annoyed me. So that's in. So that's the list. And the plan basically is to move the Monoliths and the Silent King around to get angles on things and just shoot the bejesus out of things that are either on objectives or not, and use the Monolith's Eternity Gate to move the infantry through when I can, either at the Infinity Gate or the 2 command point strat where I get hurt and then I can pull them through during the course of the opponent's turn.
Yeah.
And basically screen my vehicles from anything nasty. I don't particularly want to get involved in combat with Custodes, because Custodes are probably the best combat army in the world. But if I can stand at 23 inches away and shoot them, I'm very happy. Does this make any sense to you at all, or do you think I'm sort of playing the wrong game?
So it makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me. Everything you're saying is true. I don't like it. I hate the list. So not because I think it's bad, and not because I dislike you on any kind of fundamental level.
I get that.
It, in my head, it's one of those lists that shouldn't work, and I know plenty of people, plenty of really good players, are making Silent King and Double Monolith work. It doesn't meet my playstyle requirements that would let me play it. It doesn't meet my model requirements right now, because I own 0 monoliths and I'm not paying £300 for one on eBay.
Quite right.
But I know it works because the grown-ups are telling me it works.
Well, that's interesting, because I haven't seen monoliths on the table other than the occasional one, but I'm now seeing online reports from other competitions with 1 or 2 monoliths turning up now, but I haven't seen one with 2 monoliths and a Silent King yet, and so that might be a bit interesting.
No, I like it. I think the Silent King making that monolith shooting reroll something, right? Reroll ones or something with his aura.
Well,
is a nice option.
There's 2 reasons, Mark. The 6-inch aura of reroll 1s to hit and to wound is really powerful with the death rays, because if you roll a 1, you might roll a 5 and you get a 6 and you get your sustained hits. But the other thing is, if I want to shoot at Catans, for example, I can change that ability to ignore modifiers. So everything shooting at a Catan is going to be flat 6 damage rather than 3 damage. And he doesn't have to fail too many feel no pains to start hurting.
No, and I think, I know, like I said, I know it works because the grown-ups tell me it works, but it doesn't work in my head.
Yeah.
And so in my head, round 1, I'll get paired into a casual Tau player that's brought his 3 hammerheads, and I'll lose both monoliths on turn 1. But in my head, that's what will happen. In reality, it's not going to be far off. And I feel like
that happened to me. That happened to me. I fought my mate Craig. He shot at me with his 2 fire prisms, and using his fate dice, everything went right. Maximum wounds, maximum damage, bish bash bosh. I am dead on turn 1.
Yeah. And for me, because that can happen, right? So from a team's point of view, you can avoid matchups where that's really likely to happen, right? So I think it's great in teams. I think a lot of the noise about it is coming from a team's perspective, and dare I say it, I think at the minute, when Vic writes lists, with obviously all the work he's doing with Ignite and with
I
the work he's
think you're
doing for
right.
England,
Yeah, yeah,
he might have a slight team skew in
yeah,
what he's doing. In a singles list, I think it's more open to bad matchups existing than the list I'm taking, which I would, like you said, your own experience is every game I've played has been relatively close. And I don't need to win by big scores in a
no,
singles event. I need to win full stop,
yep,
right? So I think I've always got a chance and I can blame or be happy about player skill if I lose a match. Generally speaking, I will have made a mistake or done something awesome to win a game
mm,
versus someone's just removed 700 points on
yep,
turn one,
yeah.
and now I can't teleport my 2 infantry units around. So I don't think that list is bad. I fully trust all the people that say it's good, but it's not for me from a playstyle point of view, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's for me for a UKTC singles point of view. And if someone takes it and wins, I'm just going to be very upset.
Well, I'm going to go. I reckon with this, I always go and think I'm going to win 2 and lose 3, but I'm feeling a bit punchy. I think I might win 3 with this one when I go for the event.
Is it a 2 day or a 1 day?
2 day, five games, 2 days. I think I might win 3, and I could win 4 if I get the right matchup. And but I've already. There are things I like about it. I love the Immortals with the -1 to hit and that extra move after they've shot. That is just so powerful. It's really good.
Yep.
The Lich
Yeah.
Guard with the Imatech. You know what? That's still 10 guys. Well, it's not. It's 11 guys with a 4-up invulnerable save, who you with 2 wounds each, toughness 5, who will hurt you in combat if you're not a dedicated combat unit. That you've got to do something about. And
Yeah.
I don't care if they die. As far as I'm concerned, they can go hurtling towards the enemy's home objective. And if they die on the way, fine. Someone's been shooting at them instead of anything important. But it's still something worth doing. Sonic King, I love that 12 shots indirect. Eldar hate it. They really hate it because
Yeah.
you're just going to drop those little warp spiders or the swooping hawks that are hiding behind a wall. They're just dead, and it's just so nice to do. So that's the thing. And I've never used the Triarch Stalker, so there's probably a reason for it. But again, a 4-up invulnerable, you're probably going to have to overcommit if you want to definitely kill it. And so that's a lot of vehicles. And the final thing I think is monoliths. Toughness 13 is a brilliant breakpoint to be at because I think there's a lot of weapons on 12. There's fewer and fewer on strength 14, 15, 16. And I kind of like their ability to survive. I think that's all. What's the downside? Terrain is a problem for monoliths, less so in Hypercrit, but it is. And I haven't got a lot of mission play. I'm not worried about indirect. Guard. Oh, I'll tell you something else, Mark. I've just looked up what my first army is I'm fighting on Saturday morning, and it's a guard list. How about that?
That's good. Who's driving it though?
I won't share the name.
Yeah. Well,
It's not.
there's only one true guard player, and that's obviously in the scene. You know.
Well,
Well, no, two.
Mr.
David
Gaylord.
Gaylord,
Yeah.
David as well. But there's only the two of them. All the other guard players are obviously, according
This.
to Reddit, awful.
Well,
So
this list, mate. Let me tell you this list. I don't know much about guard, but there's the regular sort of command squad. There's the boss on the horse, whatever his name is, and then there's 4 or 5 tens of infantry to do the running about. 3 lemon russes, something called a Crassus, which is a Forge World massive transport thing. I don't know what it does, but it's got about 18 wounds and a 2-up save, and then something else called a Malcador, which I've got no idea what that is either. So that's going to be interesting. And then a few units of Sentinels just to keep coming back and annoy me. I can't see how it works. Oh, and a Basilisk, but I can't see how it's. it looks to me like I've got these lovely toys. I'm just going to put them all on the table, and I can't see what he intends to do with it.
I think he's going to shoot you. I'm pretty sure a Malcador is a great big tank.
It is, but it doesn't have any big guns.
Well,
The only things he's got that's going to damage my monoliths are the las cannons on the Lemon Russ, and the one of the Lemon Rush has got a demolisher cannon. Other than that, I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't and
I mean,
fancy the chances of 10 guardsmen if a bunch of immortals stand up in front of them with carbines. Do you?
I don't on paper, but I hope that he just turns up and just does something awesome and smashes you, because we need a third guard player in the country, because by all accounts the saltiness of Reddit is,
Yeah.
is not to be messed with in the guard forums, and I think it'll be good for them if someone else starts doing well. So I hope he gets smashed just on that basis.
Well, thank you very much for
You
that,
know.
Mark. And I know you said that with love.
Yeah. Only in that one game you can win. You can win any of the other four to meet
Oh,
your targets.
That's very nice of you. I kind of want to win my first game, mind you, but nevertheless.
Well,
Right, I'm going to try this list. As I say, I'm more inclined to have stuck with the list that is a bit more similar to yours, but I just like the idea of these vehicles. And in fact, we're going to the ITT, the International Team Tournament in Birmingham in May or June, I think it is.
May, yeah.
Yeah, we're all going to take vehicle and monster lists on the grounds that it's a team tournament. Nobody will have 5 armies geared up to deal with, I don't know, how many could I put in there? Lots and lots of armor.
Didn't you promise to do this once before, Michael?
Yeah, I did.
And didn't Alex end up taking an awful lot of not vehicles and monsters?
But that's what he's still going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
because
you're just trying to appease your viewers.
I know.
I'm calling you out. Take
No,
the vehicles.
Alex likes playing. He's the only Death Watch player at the event this weekend, and this is hilarious. He's got a Death Watch list with the Death Watch detachment, but with no Death Watch models in it.
He might be the only Death Watch player in the world, according to stats.
He might well be. And every time I play him, he absolutely murders me, because he's got that ability to pick up units and move them around and focus fire God knows how many eradicators at a particular unit and just evaporate it. And then once per game, he does the old oath of moment: reroll all your hits, reroll all your wounds on 2 separate units. So you're going to lose 2 or 3 of your key units really quickly. And I don't understand how he doesn't do better at competitions, unless he's a bit unlucky. But
Maybe he's unlucky. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he just goes to enjoy himself. Imagine that. Imagine that, where you just went to an event to have fun and didn't really try your hardest.
Mate, I remember those days.
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to go 4-1 and possibly do better than that when you go to the Manchester GT. Although that is going to be a shark tank. There's going to be a lot of really high caliber players there.
Yeah, what tends to happen with me is I'll get paired into a truly great player, something like round 2. It's happened. I've had David Gaylord very early. I've had Josh Roberts in round 6 twice in a row. That was a lot of fun. And occasional Vic. I get occasional Vic.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping just to avoid them. That'd be nice, just for day 1. I'll
played
lose to them on day 2 instead.
I played Vic, I don't know, last year or the year before, and I remember I said, I'm going to play Vic. What do I do? Because I can't even remember what army I was using, but I know. Oh, it was Chaos Space Marines before they were good, so it was a couple of years ago. And Alex said to me, he said, just charge him with everything. He won't be able to cope with everything running at him. Well, I did. And by the end of turn 2, virtually my entire army was dead. So I'm not going to take any notice of anything Alex says in the future.
And the thing is, when you play Vic, you do that, and he smashes you almost all of the time. He smashes everyone he plays, but it still feels like you've had a nice warm hug.
It does. How does he do that?
I don't know. He's the least nasty top player that I've ever encountered. He's just lovely. He doesn't
Yes.
really have. There's not really, other than losing when you would really quite like to win. Really isn't a negative element to playing Vic.
Well,
You
it's the
know.
same as playing you. You're a very easygoing player when I've played you.
Yes, but I'm not as good as them. I said at the very top end. Anyone can be nice in the mid tables, Mike, especially when they've lost a game. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I was listening when I had my chat with Kyle Grundy. He plays Tau usually, and he came second at Goonhammer. He was saying to me, he said, "You've got to watch out for the mid-table menace." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, he says, you've got the top players, and you know what armies they're going to be using, whatever is meta at the time." He says, "But there's always two or three armies in the mid-table, driven by the right person, with a little bit of luck, that can really upset your game because you're just not expecting them to be there." And he called them the mid-table menace. And
It's true.
he looked at the Grey Knights and said, "Hey, Grey Knights, mid-table menace, written all over it."
Yeah, and I think they are. Except I think it's more of a Manny menace now because once he's run them and probably won an event with them or two,
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of them. He's not the only one talking about using them right now.
yeah,
They are really good, but yeah, the mid tables is dangerous because that tends to be where the faction specialists live as well.
yeah.
So they're just gone. I've brought my army because I always bring this army.
And I know
But
exactly what I'm doing with it.
yeah, but you play them and they know the ins and outs of it because they've got so many reps, so they can turn a bang average army into a really hard to beat army
Yeah,
because they're experienced, and it's it's a great when you get that kind of game, but you sometimes you can go into a game not knowing that you've got that person,
yeah.
and you can kind of play a little bit looser, a little bit more casually, thinking you're going to win based on data and stuff, and then all of a sudden, turn 3, 4, 5, you're absolutely trying to slog it out of the point with the three models you've got left.
No, I know. Right, just to round up a little bit then. So you don't like my list, but you think it might work, which is two ends of the same kind of curve, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like your list. I think you'll do well with it. You've practiced with it. You know how it works. I'm looking down my notes here. What have I written down? I like your destroyers. I had a nightmare with them against Votan, but that's only the Votan guys. Um, the meta, what's going to be, if I win my first three games and I'm suddenly on turn game 4 on Sunday morning, what armies am I going to be facing there? Is it predictable now, or are there so many that I won't know?
I think it's predictable a big event, so I'm not sure how many people are going, but I think
90, about 90.
I think at let's say a UKTC big event with big names at it, yeah,
Yep, yep,
I think you will see several guard players undefeated by the end of day one.
yeah.
You're going to see elves, you're going to see custodes, you're going to see grey knights, you're going to see necrons. I always forget to talk about necrons. I'm not trying to dismiss them.
No, no, no. I understand.
Refuse to accept that they might be too good. And everything that I do is because I'm great with them. Obviously, it's not because they're broken. Um, and yeah, I think Drukhari have the potential to make it, but I don't think they will very often.
I think they
Um,
won't. I think it'll be a couple of months because I was looking at putting together a Drakari list because I like the look of it with the new Sky Splinter detachment. But the list had something like 3 Ravagers, 6 Raiders, 4 Venoms. I'm never going to paint it, so I just gave up. And I think it's going to be one of those specialist armies that only those people who really like Drakari are actually going to use it.
yeah, I think that's true. I think the problem is Drukhari is one of those factions that attracts the faction specialist. People
Yeah,
will go back to it real quickly. So you have people like Tom Lohman floating around. You have people like Rob Kimpton floating around who have always played Drukhari, and now they have an actual reasonable chance.
yeah,
Paulie Wallace as well, a
yeah,
reasonable chance of smashing you with it. Um, I think Tau. especially with
with the
Kyle
new.
driving them.
Well, they've got the new rules coming out as well, haven't they?
Yeah, I'm not convinced what I've seen so far sounds scarier than what they've got now, to be honest. But
No.
I've only seen very limited stuff, and I'm not a Tau player. But anything with Kyle driving it is scary, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him undefeated.
Yeah.
And I think the mid table, so undefeated after day one, hanging around sort of lists, I think there's a lot of potential to see Chaos Knights because they're a good solid stat check army.
This is the one
Votan,
this is the one with all of the 12 or 14 war dogs, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
14, well, probably, yeah, 12 to 14 War Dogs or some with Demon Allies.
Yeah.
Votan just flying low enough under the radar that no one's really too upset that some of their key rules are really good.
Yeah.
And I think faction specialist wise, I think a true demon faction specialist is probably going to be really hard to beat in the right mission. Now that he's found out he's got 300 extra points after the last data slate, I think you're going to see demon lists sort of underdogging it a little bit and giving some of the top lists, a real sort of scare at least. But I think the mid table will. I think there's a lot of talk about 3 Rend Masters, damage 5 Flesh Hounds and stuff.
He's got 3 units of flesh hounds and 2 or 3 Ren Masters.
Yeah, I want to see it. I don't necessarily think it's going to win too much, but I want to see 4 dogs biting a monolith to death at least once.
Is it me and my monoliths? You've got something against my monoliths, haven't you?
I don't like. Like I said before, it's not your list. It's not you. It's not. I don't dislike anything about it. Like, oh, it's bad or I'm gloating or anything like that. On a personal level, it's not my playstyle. But there's also an element where I don't like the really big models in 40k.
Yeah, I agree with you. I
Um,
agree.
Not at the size that we're playing. Not at a tournament 40k. I don't like it. I think it forces TOs to make weirdly skewed decisions around terrain to either
Yeah.
be inclusive or to exclude models. I don't think either of them is a good answer.
Yeah.
And it's only a few. It's monoliths. It's transcendent Catan, not Tesseract Vaults, obelisks. Some of the really big guard super heavies and things like even Imperial Knights to a degree. The big knights, we're also used to them now, but
Yeah.
it's a very different game. It doesn't always feel like you're playing the same version of 40k as everyone else.
Well, no, and I tend to agree with some of the very big models. I fought a guy at the Manchester Warhammer Fest last year. That was up there, and he had 2 of the Astraeus tanks. And honestly,
Yeah.
they just moved sideways up the table, and they just took up the entire table, and I couldn't do anything about it.
Was it Dave?
Yeah, shortish
Was.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah. Dodgy Dave.
with his orange and cream coloured Astraeus tanks.
Yeah.
They were.
He's good with them, and they were very scary / annoying. And yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. Is just a huge chuffing model that you just put somewhere, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, there's not really any tactical. There's no skill or finesse in moving a really large model around most of the time,
Right.
right? Planning your routes with things like deep strikes and monoliths, and I can get around it. I go, okay, like, it works. Yeah, fine. There's a bit of skill in positioning, but without teleport, none of this stuff would really exist. And
No,
you're just trying to shuffle a
I
fat
wouldn't use
tank
it.
through a
I
building.
did try to use a monolith, and without the ability to teleport, it rarely got out of my deployment zone. I took it to the LGT last year, and I couldn't get out of my deployment zone in most of the terrain matchups. So I give up.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, I have to go and drink my tea. My wife has made a cup of tea, knocked on the door, and told me that tea is ready, which is nice. Is there anything we haven't covered? We've talked about what's in both of our lists and why we're using them. You've told me that I've gone down in your esteem because I'm using 2 monoliths, but I'll live with that. Um, we we think I might win 2 or 3, and we think you might win 4 or 5 if you're lucky. Back right? Will you come back and tell us how you got on after Manchester?
Definitely if I win 5. And if I go less than 4, I might be busy that week. Who knows?
Okay, I'll tell you what. If you only win 3, we'll consider that a failure, and we won't have you on it for that. If you win 4, you can come back and tell us how you nearly won 5, and if you win 5, you can come back and gloat. How's that sound?
That sounds like the perfect plan.
Perfect. Mark, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the very best when you get up to Manchester.
No worries. Good luck, mate.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So quite clearly, Mark doesn't like my list at all. He is not happy with it. Even though I copied it, well, I paid homage to Vic VJ's suggestions in a previous podcast. So I'm going to give it a go. At the moment, we are discussing with the rest of my team, the Cold Steel Mercenaries, the Cold Steel Mercs. We're having a chat about what to take to the international team tournament. The consensus is that it would be nice to take 5 Mech Monster Mash lists. Alex hasn't got that, so he's going to be taking his either Custodes or Death Watch, which are all infantry, essentially. So that leaves 4 of us, and we're discussing whether we should take Monster Mash. So if I was taking Necrons, I'm going to have to rework a list, because the idea is to get rid of as much non-vehicle and non-monsters as you can. Now, I know that gives away bring it down, but it'll be really funny in a teams event where we've got 4 really armored or monstery units, and a lot of teams will have enough. We'll have a couple of armies that can deal with these, but I doubt very much whether they'll be able to deal with 4 skew lists like that. Anyway, next week I'll be back from Battlefield Birmingham with Tales of Woe, no doubt, but I will tell you how I got on. Maybe the week after that I can get Mark back on, because the Manchester Super Major will be over, and I'll see how he got on as well. So do listen in for that. If you like the kind of stuff that I'm doing here with competitive players from across the country, if you like it, press the like button, press share, the little thumbs up button, press that, leave a comment, just try and interact with me on some way, so I'm not shouting into the void. Until you do, see you on the ice.